I'm my name is David Faust, and I'm a volunteer with the American Red Cross. And I serve on our disaster action teams, and I'm a preparedness presenter, and I also I'm a media relations volunteer as well when called upon. And working with me today is Kimberly Offrecht. Kim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Kim Offrecht. I'm the preparedness manager for Orange Riverside and San Bernardino.
Great, thanks, Kim. So before we get started, we just got some general housekeeping rule that we'd like to ask you to keep your cameras turned off. That helps to improve the quality of the streaming. If you keep your microphone muted, that'll minimize any distractions and background noises. You can change your speaker and microphone device settings using the toolbar that's down at the bottom of your screen. We're going to use the chat box to ask questions, and Kimberly's going to be monitoring the chat box and during our live Q&A sessions. And so you'll be asked questions, and you can write your answers in the chat box. Okay. So let's start by testing the chat and test your knowledge too. On a scale of 1 to 10, how prepared were you for your last emergency? So please put your answers in the chat box and we'll review them.
All right, we have a 9 and a 7.
Great.
A couple more 7s. A 9.
Awesome. Well, we've got some pretty good, well-prepared folks up here, and that's awesome. And I hope that we can actually take some, increase a little bit your understanding of wildfires and how to prevent them, and maybe bring everybody up to that 9 level. So let's. Our goal with this presentation is that you'll be able to understand what is a wildfire and what are the potential impacts on your family and yourself, what your family can do to prepare for a wildfire, what your family can do during a wildfire to stay safe, and what can my family and community do after a wildfire event to recover and to make yourselves more resilient in the future. So that's the goal of our presentations today. And Kimberly, can you turn off my video from your end?
Yeah, can you speak a little louder? I could barely hear you, and I've got my microphone up on pretty high. You're real soft.
Okay, let me see. I've got my volume up 100%, so I'll get a little bit closer to the mic. Is that any better right now for you? Anybody else having trouble hearing Kimberly?
It's very, very soft. And I've got a new computer, and I've got my volume up. I just don't know why I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear a little bit better? Others are saying that they can hear you great, Dave.
I can hear you fine. It's
okay.
The gentleman. He's got a real soft voice.
I'll try to speak a little. Okay, thanks. I'll try to speak a little louder than for you too.
Thank you.
So let's first define what a wildfire is. A wildfire is an unplanned or unwanted fire burning in a natural area, such as a forest, grassland, or prairie. And wildfires are increasing in size and intensity across the United States. And these trends are expected to continue. And as communities expand into natural areas, homes are increasingly situated in or near areas that are prone to wildfires. We call this the wildland urban interface. And in fact, about 1/3 of all homes in the United States are in the wildland urban interface and face enhanced wildfire risks. So no matter how they start, wildfires can be unpredictable and they can be fast moving. And they pose a danger to people and animals and structures because wind can carry burning embers a mile or more away. Wildfires can even create their own winds, which are so strong that it's unsafe even for firefighting aircraft. And in the right conditions, an ember can start a fire that grows out of control within minutes. And the amount of destruction a wildfire can cause depends on many factors. These include the area size, the landscape, the amount of fuel or burnable debris that's present and available, and the wind. And wildfires can also impact transportation routes and power and telecommunications and other important infrastructure. And of course, they have long-term ecological impacts, such as they consume many tens of thousands of acres, and they can damage critical natural areas, and they can impact watersheds, where most of our water in Southern California comes from. And they often increase the risk of flooding and mudslides for many years. And the photograph you see here in this slide is an image of the El Dorado fire, which occurred in September 2020 here in Southern California. So let's do another pop quiz. What do you think is the most common cause of wildfires? So put your answers in the chat box, and Kimberly will read them aloud.
We have one that says people,
Yeah, I agree, people.
lightning, humans,
Weather can play a factor too as well, like electricity or electrical wires and the hot heat.
Mhm.
And dry brush.
another guess for lightning as well.
Well, those are all great answers. Around 85% of wildfires are caused by people. And we'll go into more detail in the next slide here. So wildfires can happen at any time of the year and anywhere in the United States. And of course, now it seems in California, there no longer is a wildfire season. And there are many causes of wildfires, including lightning was mentioned, and even strong winds that bring down power lines and cause fires. And this causes about 10 to 15% of wildfires. But according to the National Park Service, people cause up to 85% to 90% of wildfires through burning debris, careless outdoor equipment like grills and lawn maintenance equipment, discarding cigarettes carelessly, and leaving campfires unattended, and of course, even arson. And maybe we could even say gender reveal parties too. Already in 2021, CAL FIRE has responded to over 7,000 incidents in our state, and almost 2 million acres have burned, destroying over 3,000 structures and unfortunately one loss of life. But there are things that you can do to prevent a wildfire, such as don't drive your vehicle onto dry grass or brush. Keep hot component, because hot components under your vehicle can spark the fires, and use outdoor equipment responsibly, like lawnmowers and chainsaws and tractors and trimmers, which can all spark a wildfire. And use caution anytime you use fire. Dispose of charcoal briquettes and fireplace ashes properly, and never leave any outdoor fire unattended. And make sure that outdoor fires are fully extinguished before leaving the area. And if residential debris burning is allowed in your area, always use caution. After obtaining any necessary permits, ensure that burning is not concurrently restricted in your area due to dangerous fire weather conditions, and store combustible and flammable materials in approved safety containers away from the house, and keep your grills and propane tanks always at least 15 feet away from any structure. And don't use your grill during dangerous fire weather conditions. And always have a fire extinguisher or a hose nearby, and learn how to properly use a fire extinguisher. We often don't think about how to use one until we need it. So be prepared and learn how to use it before you need it. And wildfires, we know, really can be truly devastating. And all these things could happen as a result of a wildfire event. Not only death, injury to people and to animals, but homes and businesses can be damaged or destroyed. And power, water, gas, and communication outages will occur. Roads are blocked or destroyed. Water quality in our watersheds can be affected. And then following the wildfires, when we have storm events later in the year, there's an increased risk of erosion, landslides, floods, and debris flow. Even if one of these things happened, it would change the lives of people for a significant amount of time. But imagine many of these things happening at once. Again, any of these events can and do have deep and lasting impacts. So let's talk about ways to be prepared before a wildfire event. So the first thing to do is to find out if you live in an area prone to wildfires. So consider reaching out to your state or local emergency management agency for help understanding your local wildfire risk, and contact your state or local fire department, as they can also help you understand your wildfire risk. And by working with your local government emergency management agency, you can familiarize yourself with your community's updated response plan. And then, based on what you learn about your location and your community's plans and circumstances, you can make your own evacuation plans. And it's also important to understand and know the impacts of your health from wildfire smoke. Wildfire smoke is a complex mixture of air pollutants that are harmful to human health. Where I live, I don't have a direct risk to a wildland fire, but I have an indirect risk from the smoke from fires that are within 10 to 15 miles away from my home. And the exposure to these air pollutants can do a lot of damage, such as irritate the lungs and cause inflammation. They can alter your body's immune functions and increase your susceptibility to respiratory infections, cause coughing and difficulty breathing, and they can even exacerbate asthma. This image here is of the Apple fire, which occurred July of 2020. So we've focused really on how you can prepare and protect yourself and members of your household. Now let's go on to discuss ways to prepare your home in the event of a wildfire. And a wildfire can threaten a home in three ways: with windblown embers, with contact with the flames, and then also with the heat. And the good news is that you can make your home more resistant to these threats, and you can do this by removing debris and brush and other flammable materials that are near your home, regularly clean flammable debris from roofs and gutters, and use fire-resistant construction materials on your home if you're building a new home. Landscape your property with fire-resistant plants and materials, and also review your insurance policy, because some hazards damage property regardless of how prepared you are. So that's why homeowners and renters insurance are so important. And if you are renting an apartment or a home, it's important to know what your landlord's insurance will not cover, what damage they won't cover if your possessions are lost or damaged in the event of a disaster. Renter's insurance is not that expensive, but it can have a significant impact on your recovery, because it pays for your damaged, destroyed, or personal property. And make sure that your address is visible and your street sign is clearly marked. And this can help your community and responders in a disaster. A little more on defensible spaces. And while any house can burn under severe conditions, a defensible space significantly increases the odds that your home will survive a wildfire. So it's also makes it easier for firefighters to defend your home. But it's your responsibility to maintain a defensible space in the 100 feet surrounding your home, or the distance between your house and the nearest building. You may have to work with your neighbors and your community to maintain defensible spaces around your homes. And a well-maintained defensible space minimizes the combustibility of your home, and it makes it harder for wildfires to reach your house. And some ways to maintain your defensible space include conducting regular vegetation maintenance and selecting the plants carefully, and keeping shrubs and grasses closest to your house, always under 2 feet tall and away from windows, and follow any plant separation guidelines. And be sure to remove all dead or dying plant material promptly, as it's extremely flammable. And this includes tree branches and vines and shrubs and annuals and grasses, pine needles, leaf litter, and cuttings. And don't forget your roof and your gutters. And remember to follow all safety guidelines for power tools, because as we mentioned before, spark production from power tools can cause fires. So sometimes it may require professional assistance for some tasks, such as trimming your trees. So your local fire authority or fire district or fire agency can provide more information. And some agencies offer home assessments on how well your house is defensible in a fire. So you can prepare to meet your basic needs by learning critical skills and gathering critical supplies. And we'll talk about some of the specific supplies next. But let's talk first about critical skills. Take the time now to learn critical skills that you may need, such as first aid and CPR. The Red Cross has a variety of online classes to learn these skills, and you can also download the free first aid app. Learn how to turn off your utilities in case you're instructed to do so, and learn how to use safely any equipment that you have, like generators or backup battery supplies for any medical equipment, things like that. Keep a 1-month supply of your prescription medications on hand, as well as any over-the-counter medications like cough suppressants and fever-reducing drugs and any medical supplies or equipment. And keep these items separate together in a separate container so that you can take them if you need to evacuate. And create an evacuation kit. We call it a go bag, which is really a 3-day supply of in a lightweight bag. It's a smaller version of what you can take with you if you need to evacuate. This includes everything you need to be on your own for 3 days. And then to prepare for wildfire events specifically, also consider getting an N95 mask, which can help protect your lungs from the smoke, because a cloth mask or a damp cloth just will not provide the protection that you need from smoke. So knowing that you could be without power and that the roads could be impassable for an extended period, build your household's capacity to survive by gathering at least a 1-week supply of food, water, and medications in a home kit. Stock food items that don't need refrigeration and that will last, and regularly replace items like water, food, and medications and batteries that will expire over time. And if you're in an isolated area or on an island, consider gathering a 2-week supply of food and water and medication. So be sure to customize the kit to meet the needs of everyone in your household. Some of the things that we would suggest is to have at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for a 7-day supply, and that's as a minimum, whereas a 2-week supply is preferred. Gather non-perishable, easy to prepare items, again, a 7-day supply minimum, but if you can, stretch it out to a 2-week supply. And regarding medical needs, be equipped to tend to any current or unexpected medical conditions that your family may have. Gather a first aid kit, a 1-month supply of medications and medical items and supplies, things like hearing aids that might need extra batteries and glasses, contact lenses, syringes and canes, and have copies of your prescriptions and the dosages and the treatment information that on hand in case you're not seeing your regular doctor following a disaster. And acquire a battery backup as a power source for any power supported mobility devices, such as if you're using supplemental oxygen or any assistive technology needs like scooters or things like that. And regarding communications, stay informed if the power goes out. And remember that cell phone and internet service often becomes unavailable. So you might want to invest in an emergency radio, which will allow you to receive weather, disaster, and safety information. And you can get a battery powered or hand crank emergency radio. We call it a NOAA weather radio. If possible, they're fairly inexpensive. They're about 20 bucks. Kimberly, can you turn on my camera for just a second?
It looks like I can only ask you to start your own video.
Okay, there you go. Just wanted to show you my little, this is a little hand crank radio. It's actually got solar. It has a battery backup, and it has this little hand crank here. So you can crank up enough juice to run the radio, turn on the flashlight for a while. Antenna, it's AM, FM, and it also has the weather station channel on it as well too. So pretty cool, 20 bucks. Places like Amazon, they're easy to get to. Thanks, Kimberly. You can turn me off again. So also consider gathering sanitation and personal hygiene items such as hand sanitizers and towelettes, as clean water might be limited. So Other things that you might consider in your kit are tools and safety items like matches and flashlights with extra batteries, battery operated lanterns with extra batteries, and even multi-purpose tools and whistles. And consider gathering personal protective gear such as blankets or extra sleeping bags, extra clothing and hats, and sturdy shoes, work gloves, those N95 masks that I mentioned, and even sunscreen and insect repellent. And then don't forget items that are specific to the your family. If you have infants, so you might need baby supply, like bottles and formula and baby food and diapers. And don't forget your pets. You might need collars and leashes and IDs and food and carrying bowls for your pets. And another important consideration may be having extra cash, because the ATMs may not be functioning if there's no power. So having an extra set of car keys is also important, even an extra set of house keys. And then don't forget comfort items, because if you're, especially have to evacuate your home and be away from your home and at a shelter for a period of time, having some entertainment items like games and activities, especially for children, is important. And then also, one of the things that disaster survivors have reported that their biggest recovery gap has been losing their important documents. And so build your household's capacity to recover quickly by taking the time now to safeguard your personal, financial, insurance, and medical records. Having important documents easy to access or in a fireproof or waterproof container is really important. And so keep those in copies of those in your emergency kit. You can also store alternative copies in like a safety deposit box or at your work, or even with a trusted friend or family member. And even consider making electronic copies and keep them on a flash drive in your emergency kit, or even email copies to yourself, or maybe keep them in the cloud. Digital storage is easy and cheap to and often free, depending on some of the providers. And you can store copies of your insurance policies and driver's license and things like that. I keep all of my important documents, besides having some in a fireproof safe, or I guess it's really more fire resistant, but I have a little thumb drive that goes on my keychain. So I've always got those with me if I were to need those. So these important documents, again, birth certificates, passports, social security cards, and any other personal documents you might need. Also have current digital photos of your loved ones, and update these pictures every 6 months, because often folks get separated during a disaster or during an evacuation, or maybe half the family evacuated and mom or dad was away at home, away from home at the time. And so having current pictures will help help those that might be searching for those that are missing. And so you also want to include photos of any valuable belongings that you might need to help in your insurance recovery. So for more information, you can go to the American Red Cross's website. So if you live in an area that is prone to wildfire events, be prepared to evacuate and take the time now to plan for a possible evacuation. Discuss the potential need for an emergency shelter with your friends and relatives that are outside your area. If you would, and ask if you'd be able to stay with them in the event of an emergency. You should also research hotels and motels and campgrounds as possible places to go during evacuation. Of course, these would be areas outside your immediate area. And especially, I would also inquire if they allow pets. Some hotels do, and some don't. And you can find out what sheltering resources are available from your local emergency management agency, or from the free Red Cross emergency app. And you can learn about your community's evacuation points and assembly points and other places people gather for safety and evacuation. And if you have a disability and need assistance walking, or have low vision or are blind or deaf or hard of hearing, develop a comprehensive evacuation plan with your family and your care providers and assess your abilities and needs before, during, and after a disaster. And create a personal support network to assist you if you need that. And if you receive regular medical treatment, work with your healthcare provider to determine how you will maintain treatment if you have to evacuate your home. And you know what? Get to know your neighbors because they might also need help too. Also include in your evacuation planning a transportation plan. Consider the vehicle or the vehicles that you're going to use, the routes that you will take out of your area, have an alternate route in case the primary route is impassable, and make it a habit to keep at least a half a tank of gas in your car in order to avoid fueling up during the evacuation. And just be aware of your conditions around you. You may not receive an evacuation order as sometimes, these systems aren't always perfect, but be prepared to take the initiative if you determine the need to evacuate. And be sure to prepare that go bag of emergency supplies. And through local networks, you can register for alerts and notifications from your community or municipality, and so that you can monitor conditions and receive instructions from local officials. Even during a power outage, I get alerts from Southern California Edison in my area if there's going to be outages in my neighborhood. The rivers, I live in Riverside County, and there's alerts that you can get from the county on weather conditions, and there's emergency apps as well that we'll talk more about in a minute. So after you register for these alerts, learn the types of notifications to expect and what to do when you receive them. And the Red Cross's emergency app is a great free download that we'll discuss in a little bit more detail later. And it's important to understand your community's plan and how they notify individuals, especially those with disabilities. Purchase a battery-powered radio, like I showed you, so you can receive information from local authorities during a power outage. And it's also important to know that there are weather radios with text display and flashing alerts for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. So there's a lot of resources out there. Kimberly can put some of those in the chat, weather.gov/fire, air quality index at airnow.gov, wildfire smoke outlooks. There's a lot of different areas where you can sign up for alerts or see ongoing conditions. So your safety depends on understanding wildfires and staying informed about the conditions that are occurring and then acting quickly. And while wildfires can occur at any time during the year, they are more likely during periods of little rainfall. And many communities even have a designated fire season in which wildfires are more likely to occur. And the National Weather Service issues watches and warnings when weather conditions such as strong winds, low humidity, and high temperatures make wildfires more likely to occur. And you should stay informed about the conditions in your area and any watches or warnings that are issued. I'm going to go back to my little radio here and just turn it on.
Saturday, mostly sunny. Highs 96 to 101. Saturday night, mostly clear. Lows 65 to 70. Sunday, sunny. Highs 96 to 101.
So see, that's from the weather the weather alert channel on my little portable radio. So let's talk about what watches and warnings are when it comes to fire weather. So a fire weather watch means potentially dangerous fire weather conditions are possible over the next 12 to 72 hours. A red flag warning means a fire danger exists and weather patterns that support wildfires are either occurring or are expected to occur within 24 hours. Authorities may also issue a fire weather watch before a warning, but a warning may also be the initial notification. So during a fire, an extreme fire behavior alert also may be issued. And this means that the wildfire is erratic, it's intense, and it's likely to rage out of control. So communication networks, such as mobile phones and computers, they can be unreliable during and after a wildfire event, and electricity could be down, as we mentioned. So build the capacity of all the members of your household to connect with one another during communication outages. And be sure to have a backup battery to charge your cell phone. Keep important numbers written down in case you can't access your contact list on your phone. And complete a contact card like the one here shown in this example for each household member. And everyone should keep these cards with them always. Remember, texting is best. If you're using a mobile phone, a text message may get through when a phone call cannot. So make sure your household members, everyone of all ages, know how to text, and be sure that the recipient confirms the text message. And then designate an out-of-town contact who can help your household reconnect. And it also, often it's easier to reach people outside of the affected areas. And with members in your own household, plan a meeting spot so that you can reconnect when it's safe to do so if phones are not working. And then be sure to practice your communication plan with every member of your household. So now we're going to move on to what to do during a wildfire event, and what does it mean to respond appropriately during pre-evacuation and then during the evacuation. And remember, evacuate immediately if advised. You may determine to do that even before the official order is given. So when an evacuation is anticipated, follow these steps. Shut all the windows and doors. And again, if time permits, shut all the windows and doors, and remove flammable window shades and curtains and close metal shutters. Move flammable furniture to the center of the room, away from windows and doors. Shut off the gas at the meter, turn off pilot lights, and shut off the air conditioning. Leave your lights on so firefighters can see your house under smoky conditions. And gather up any flammable items from the exterior of the house and bring them inside, like patio furniture and toys and trash cans. Turn off any propane tanks and move your propane barbecue appliances away from any structures. And don't leave sprinklers on or water running, as they can affect critical water pressure used by firefighters. Back your car into the driveway with the vehicle loaded and all doors and windows closed, and ensure that your emergency supply kits that we've been talked about are in your vehicle. And then locate all your pets ahead of time, and so that they're ready to be taken with you if you need to evacuate. So let's look at let's ask another question too. When it's a mandatory evacuation order is issued, when should you leave your home? You can put your answers, please, in the chat box. When a mandatory evacuation order is issued, when should you leave your home?
We said as soon as you can, as soon as possible, yesterday, immediately, ASAP.
Awesome. Those are awesome answers. That's exactly right. If you receive a mandatory evacuation order, you should leave immediately. Officials will issue orders to evacuate for areas that are at a risk from fire, especially if the fire is exhibiting erratic behavior. For the safety of your household, this is not the time to discuss it, to debate it with your family members or your neighbors. Be prepared to leave, and then don't wait until it's too late. Leave immediately. Thank you for your responses. So all evacuation instructions provided by officials should be followed immediately for your own safety. And so leave as soon as fire officials recommend evacuation to avoid being caught in the fire, the smoke, or even road congestion. If you are advised to leave, please evacuate. And officials will determine the areas to be evacuated, and they'll provide escape routes to use depending on the fire's location and behavior and winds and terrain. And you'll be advised of potential evacuations as early as possible. And so you must take the initiative to stay informed and be aware. So listen to your radio and TV for announcements from local officials. You can also monitor social media as well too. So now we're going to move on to discuss what to do after a wildfire event. And firstly, don't return home until authorities say it's safe to do so. And use caution when entering burned areas, as hazards may still exist, including hotspots, which can flare up without warning. And avoid damaged or fallen power lines and poles and any downed wires. And watch out for something that's called ash pits and mark them for safety. And these basically, this is where ash from the fire has filled in a depression or a hole in the ground. And as you're walking through, you may not realize that you think you're stepping on firm ground when you actually sink down, and easy to hurt yourself, sprain an ankle or worse. Follow public health guidance on safe cleanup of fire and ash and the safe use of masks. And keep in mind that really, this is not an area that children should be assisting in. Wet down any debris to minimize breathing in dust particles, and make sure you're wearing gloves and heavy-soled shoes to protect your hands and feet. You might even consider putting these in your emergency kit in order to have them when you're working to recover. And then any cleaning products and paint and batteries and damaged fuel containers need to be disposed of properly to avoid any risk from those items. And ensure that your food and water that were left behind in your home are safe, and discard any food that has been exposed to heat or smoke or soot. And the rule is, when in doubt, throw it out. And don't ever use water that you think may have been contaminated to wash dishes or brush your teeth, prepare food or wash hands or make ice or even a baby formula. And if there is no power, check to make sure the main breaker is on. And fires may cause breakers to trip. So if the breakers are on and the power is still not present, contact the utility company. Inspect your roof immediately and extinguish any sparks or embers, because wildfires may leave burning embers that could reignite. And for several hours afterwards, recheck for smoke and sparks throughout the home, including the attic, and visually check the stability of any trees around your home. Any tree that's been weakened by fire may also be a hazard. And look for burns on the tree trunk. If the bark on the trunk has been burned off or scorched by very high temperatures completely around the circumference of the tree will not survive and should be considered unstable. So document all your damaged possessions and take pictures, and be sure to save any recovery related receipts for insurance purposes. So let's ask another question in our chat box. Which type of alert means that the fire weather conditions are imminent or currently occurring? You put your answer in the chat box. Remember, there were a choice between weather watch and red flag warning.
There was a third one. I can't remember the name, but it was before the major one, where you have to get out immediately.
We have a red flag warning a couple times in the chat.
Great. Yeah, that's correct. A red flag warning means the conditions are increasing the risk of fast moving fires. And so that's when you really need to be ready to go. That's when you gather your emergency supplies, you put the car, back it in the driveway, and get ready, gather your pets. That's when it's time to be ready to go. Because a fire weather watch means that the weather's hot and dry and windy conditions over the next 12 to 72 hours. So let's recap some of the things that we talked about with a little video that I think you'll enjoy.
When the fire starts, the flames spread, and things start burning to the ground, you'll ask yourself, how prepared or unprepared are you? Have you trimmed the trees, picked up the leaves, and cleared all the flammable debris? Did you clear a zone at least 30 feet from your home? It's best to work in unity with your entire community. Is your emergency supply kit packed? Are your documents safe? Does your family have a plan and know what to do? Because when the flames come your way, you need to be ready. Stay informed. Check for updates. And if you're told to go, grab your bags and hit the road. Don't dilly-dally or waste any time. Your life could be on the line. Now, if the fire gets near, try not to panic. Do not be frantic. Go as low as you can, covering your mouth and nose. Once the flames are out and the smoke disappears, do not go home until you hear the all clear. When it's time to clean up, put on some gloves, a mask, and long sleeves. It's a good idea, most definitely. So before the fire starts, the flames spread, and things start burning to the ground, get prepared. Make a plan. Practice what you know, because a wildfire can happen anytime, anywhere, even close to home. Get started today. Go to ready.gov/prepare.
Great little film there. Well, we want to thank all of you for joining us for this presentation today. And before we wrap up, we want to bring to your attention our Red Cross Emergency app. And the American Red Cross Emergency app gives people instant access to customizable weather alerts and safety tips and preparedness information for several different emergencies, all in one free and easy to use app. And family members and friends across the country can help each other stay safe and connect through the app's customizable emergency alerts and connect on what to do before, during, and after disasters, regardless of where they live. And the app provides expert advice, not only on wildfires, but on what to do in case of a tornado or hurricane, an earthquake, a flood, a thunderstorm, a winter storm, or other disasters. And you can even use the Make a Plan feature to create an emergency plan for your household so that everyone knows what to do and where to go if a disaster strikes. And again, the emergency app is available for free in app stores for smartphones and tablets and wearables, and can also be found by searching for American Red Cross or by going to the redcross.org/apps website. Well, this concludes our presentation today, and we really appreciate your attention, all those that hung in there with us. And we ask you to do us a favor. If you could fill out this short anonymous survey so that we can continue to improve this presentation for our future audiences and track our progress. And you can either point your cell phone's camera feature at this QR code, or Kimberly will also put the link in the chat box too, that you can click and bookmark on your computer or phone. So we'd love to be able to answer any questions that you might have. And since we're a small group, you could raise your hand or put them in the chat box if you want to stay silent, and Kimberly will read your questions.
We do have a few questions from the chat. So the first question regarding talking to local fire departments and finding out where the hazard zones are. Someone asked if their insurance company would also know if they were in a fire zone. Your insurance company might know. Your local fire department is local to your area, so they might know better what hazards you're facing. But your insurance company, they may also have the answers, but often they're a bit more national in their coverage.
I would say the same thing. Good question, though. Thank you.
We also had a question: do we lock our home if we flee? And I think that you would lock your home. You can leave a key with your fire agency, but yeah, you should lock your doors.
Definitely. The one thing I might suggest is that if you have any gates on your property or fences, you might leave those unlocked so that the fire department doesn't have to waste valuable time cutting locks or breaking down fences to get to your property. So
that's a great point.
Thanks. Good question, though. Thank you.
Looking for more questions here. So we did have a suggestion in the chat that in the past, they've packed their car immediately when a fire is approaching. And then that way, when the evacuation order comes out, they're ready to leave immediately. Their car is already packed and ready to go. Exactly. They also pointed it toward the street. Those are all great suggestions.
Great, exactly. Those are things that you want to do.
What happens?
Go ahead.
What happens if you somebody tells you right away that there's a fire that's coming and you don't have time to get your pets? Like, let's say cats are the worst. I don't have a cat, but I have a friend that has a cat, I have a dog, but dogs are a little bit easier. But let's say you do have an animal like that. What do you do if you don't have time to get your animal?
That's always the hardest question to answer. But I would say if you absolutely cannot find your pet and you need to get out right then, personally, I would leave my pet behind. Because I have 4 cats. I love my cats, but when it comes to trying to find them and putting them in a crate, it's really difficult. Now, if you have a little bit more warning, in the example of packing the car beforehand and then pointing the car toward the street, that would be a great time to start gathering your animals either into the same room or even into their crates right then. That way, when you do get the order to evacuate, they're all right there ready to go.
And that's why being aware of conditions around you, weather conditions, and signing up for some of those alerts that would tell you, like I played on that little live broadcast. It was giving me the weather outlook for the next 3 days in this general area here. So being aware of weather conditions and your surrounding conditions, talking to your neighbors, listening to news reports and things, that gives you a much better and it extends the time of preparedness, I should say, so that you increases your early warning time so that you can then wrangle those cats, which is, like you say, almost impossible to do sometimes.
There's a reason that they call it herding cats.
I think I'll stay with my dogs. They're a lot easier to control.
Yes. So we had another question in the chat about will local roads be marked with exits? Another person chimed in that said that a city next door actually tried to block their only exit out as a fire was approaching, and the fire department had a conversation with them about that, but that they have never seen people mark the exits. I've also never seen exits marked. It's possible that you live in an area where they might mark the exits, but it's also up to you to find your exit route and determine which routes you're going to take ahead of time, so that you know where to go when the time comes.
Often you'll see what law enforcement does is they'll block people from coming into the areas. This was especially true in the recent fire up in Lytle Creek, where a lot of folks that once the evacuation orders were issued, mandatory evacuation, they might have been at work or out of the area and they weren't able to return to their homes. And so that's why we didn't touch on it, but having an emergency kit for a 3-day kit in your car at all times is a great idea, so that because you never know when you're going to be stranded somewhere in event of any kind of emergency, let alone a wildfire. And so fortunately, the Red Cross was there to open a shelter, and we were able to provide food and a place to sleep and for folks that were displaced that couldn't get to their homes, or folks that were asked to evacuate and just didn't have anywhere else to go. Red Cross is always right there to be able to assist folks that are displaced in wildfires. Most recently, just a few weeks ago, and even there was a big windstorm out in the desert. Was it out by Mecca, Kimberly, where we had about 600 folks that were without power?
Yes.
In the summertime. So Red Cross set up a shelter for those folks that were displaced from their homes. Thank you for the question and for the statements too.
We do have a few more questions.
Great.
So what about watering down the roof before we leave?
Well, I mean, if your roof is of wood composite, that's okay. But if conditions are hot and dry, it's not going to last very long. And it's more important that you personally prepare to evacuate and get your family out safely. And if you've got that defensible space around your home is it makes it easier for the fire department to defend your home, because and I've seen some aerial photos just even recently of homes that had large defensible spaces around that were everything around their home was burnt completely, but their home was protected because it was easy to defend because there wasn't vegetation and debris and things like that around really close to their house. So I think it's more important to be prepared Be proactive about keeping the flammable materials away from your home and pine needles off your roofs and things like that, and being prepared to evacuate. It's a, you just don't want to put yourself at risk by trying to protect your home and then lose that escape window. Good question.
Another
Thank you.
question. Are those emergency bags they sell worth it, or should I make my own?
Well, it's easy to buy those pre-made kits. They're not cheap though. And you know what? You can start your kit today just by using some things that are common around your house. Extra pair of clothes, extra medication, extra food items that don't require refrigeration. You can start building your kit now with things that you have around your home. And I bet you can get probably about 90% of the things that you need, maybe all of it, just by things that you already have in your home. And then putting that kit all together in a bag that you can buy cheap backpacks or duffel bags, or even a pillowcase if necessary, just so that you have those things ready to go in case you have to leave quickly. And for the 2-week supply or 1-week supply for your home, you can start slowly to build that up. We're not asking you to go out and spend $1,000 on a 2-week supply of all these things today, but start today just building the kit, a home kit in case you have to shelter in place or in your home for up to 2 weeks. You might not have access to a lot of services, and also that go bag if you're asked to evacuate. You don't have to spend a lot of money to be prepared. I guess that's the bottom line. Thank you, though.
Great questions, everybody. So we do, I'll read some of the comments too. Another thing that you can possibly buy is a fire retardant gel that you can pre-spray on your house. If the fire department knows that you put it on, they can rehydrate it to keep your house a little safer if they have time. I've actually never heard that suggestion before. So that was
pretty high tech. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do that and you've got the time, go for it. But again, don't put yourself and your family at risk, wasting time doing those things. Things can be replaced.
I have seen that stuff though at the end of a fire. It dries out and it gets really gross and it's really hard to take off. So just keep that in mind as well.
The red fire retardant that they drop.
Yeah. So insurance companies are already forcing neighbors to cut brush back. They won't pay a claim if you have brush very close to the house. That's another great reason to create that defensible space. Would you recommend keeping a fire extinguisher or water hose near a backyard grill or barbecue? Is one better than the other?
Either one. I mentioned both. Having a fire extinguisher, it's important to know how to use a fire extinguisher, and if you had some training, about the pass method, pull the pin, aim, squeeze, and then sweep. So if you know how to use a fire extinguisher, that's great. If not, have that hose on standby, ready to go.
Yeah. All right, and then another suggestion on how you can make your own 72-hour kit. You can buy freeze-dried food online or at big box stores. They have a 25-year plus shelf life, and then lots of extra water to rehydrate the food. Many of them have warmers in them. Also a great suggestion, I saw a ton of those on Amazon. I recently had to replace my food because it had all expired. And I went with not necessarily the freeze-dried food, but I went with the little protein block method, which probably doesn't taste quite as good, but I don't need the water to rehydrate it.
Yeah, so again, that's a good point, that you're going to need extra water for those freeze-dried items, but that's okay. Yeah, speaking of water, having a gallon per person per day, if you have a family of 4, so that's 4 gallons for every day times 7. That's 28 gallons. That's a lot of water.
That is a lot of water.
I find for mobility, it's really easy to buy those 2.5 gallon square water jugs. And so each one, they have a handle in the center. They're easy to grab and go, rather than trying to grab 30 1-gallon water jugs. roll that 55-gallon barrel into the back of your pickup truck full of water. So those are nice, easy ways to transport a lot of water to get that 3-day supply.
Yeah. So someone had to replace expired medications and OTC items. Yeah, so food is not the only thing that expires. Water also has a pull date if you have the bottled water. Batteries also will expire, medications, as you mentioned. And actually, surprisingly, Band-Aids and diapers also have, like, not necessarily an expiration date, but they do have a shelf life. They get dried out and they won't work as well, especially the adhesive in both items. So just keep an eye on those things and replace them when necessary.
Yeah, so check your kit every 6 months, and just to make sure that everything, you might just like checking the batteries on your, replacing the batteries in your smoke detectors in your house. Maybe do it every time change. Just that's a good reminder to check your for expiration dates on your emergency kits. Great, thanks.
All right, so we're almost out of time. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask before we end this presentation?
Thank you. And unfortunately, I think we're still out for more wildfires in the future. We're not out of the woods yet. So this is a timely topic, and I appreciate everyone's attendance with us today for hanging in there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And we do have another presentation on the 29th of September at 6:30. And that will be, the link will be posted on our social media. We also have a flyer as well. And so if you're interested in joining that, that will be on home fires.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.